The most brutal wars in history you've never heard of. Prologue. History's Forgotten Infernos. When we think of brutal wars, names like World War II, Vietnam, and the American Civil War dominate the collective memory. But history is littered with equally devastating, yet lesser-known conflicts, wars that turned empires to ash, wiped out civilizations, and stained continents in blood. This is the story of the Forgotten Wars. Conflicts so cruel, so merciless, that they are scarcely whispered about in classrooms or textbooks. 1. The Taiping Rebellion, 1850 to 1864. China's apocalypse. Death toll, estimated 20 to 30 million. This was not just a rebellion. It was a religious crusade, civil war, and ideological purge rolled into one. Led by Hong Xiuquan, a failed civil servant who believed himself to be the brother of Jesus Christ, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom set out to overthrow China's Qing dynasty and replace it with a radical, pseudo-Christian theocracy. Cities were razed, civilians massacred, and entire regions depopulated. The war featured child soldiers, mass executions, and total war tactics. The scale of death rivaled World War I, yet it remains largely unknown outside China. Even after 14 years of bloodshed, the devastation left parts of China so ravaged that they never recovered demographically. 2. The Congo Free State Genocide, 1885 to 1908. A colonial hell. Death toll, estimated 10 million. Under the personal rule of King Leopold II of Belgium, the Congo was transformed into a giant forced labor camp. Leopold's soldiers and mercenaries, known as the Force Publique, enslaved the Congolese to extract rubber through mutilation, rape, and mass murder. Villages were burned to enforce quotas. Children's hands were severed as punishment or proof of execution. The Reign of Terror was so horrific it sparked one of the first international human rights movements. Despite this, the Congo genocide is still not officially recognized in most Western history curricula. 3. The An Lushan Rebellion, 755 to 763. China's Forgotten Civil War. Death toll, estimated 13 to 36 million. This devastating civil war within the Tang dynasty erupted when General An Lushan revolted and declared himself emperor. The war shattered the Tang Golden Age. Entire provinces were depopulated. The death toll, though impossible to calculate exactly, may have been the deadliest civil conflict in human history. The rebellion destabilized China for centuries and caused a permanent demographic and economic decline. 4. The 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648. Europe's religious bloodbath. Death toll, 8 million. A patchwork of religious conflicts, dynastic rivalries, and political feuds turned the Holy Roman Empire into a charnel house. Germany's population declined by up to 40% in some regions. The war featured mercenary armies who raped, looted, and burned as they pleased. Disease, famine, and economic collapse compounded the violence. It ended with the Peace of Westphalia, but the scars shaped Europe for generations, setting the foundation for the modern nation-state system. 5. The Second Congo War, 1998 to 2003. Africa's World War. Death toll, estimated 5.4 million. Nicknamed Africa's World War, the Second Congo War involved 9 nations and dozens of armed groups. It was triggered by the Rwandan genocide spillover, but spiraled into a war for control of Congo's vast mineral wealth. Civilians were starved, raped, and slaughtered en masse. Child soldiers were used by virtually all factions. The war never truly ended. Its consequences echo in Congo's ongoing violence today. Despite being the deadliest conflict since World War II, it received minimal global attention. 6. The Paraguayan War, 1864 to 1870. South America's bloodbath. Death toll, 300,000 to 1.2 million, including civilians. Led by dictator Francisco Solano Lopez, Paraguay went to war against Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. The result? Paraguay lost 60 to 70% of its total population, including nearly all adult males. The war crippled Paraguay for over a century. Lopez fought to the death with a machete, declaring, "I die with my country." One of the most pointless and devastating wars in Latin American history, it is almost forgotten outside the continent. 7. The Russian Civil War, 1917 to 1923, the birth of the Soviet beast. Death toll, 7 to 12 million. Following the Bolshevik Revolution, Russia plunged into a brutal civil war between the Red Army, communists, and White Army, anti-communists, with multiple foreign powers intervening. Executions, pogroms, famine, and chemical warfare were widespread. The Red Terror and White Terror both slaughtered civilians indiscriminately. The war birthed the Soviet Union, setting the stage for global Cold War tensions. Yet outside of Russia, this conflict is rarely studied in depth, despite its massive geopolitical consequences. 8. The Biafran War, 1967 to 1970, Nigeria's forgotten genocide. Death toll, 1 to 2 million. When the Igbo people declared independence as the Republic of Biafra, Nigeria responded with a brutal blockade and military assault. Mass starvation became a weapon of war. Foreign journalists revealed horrifying images of skeletal children and mass graves. The term Biafra became synonymous with humanitarian crisis, but soon faded from international memory. To this day, the Nigerian government avoids serious discussion of the war. It remains a silent scar in Africa's history. Epilogue: History's dark corners. These forgotten wars remind us that violence isn't just about global headlines. It's about the untold, the silenced, and the politically inconvenient. Each of these wars left behind a trail of devastation, cultural trauma, and unresolved injustice. Yet they barely receive a paragraph in most history books. If we want to understand the true scale of human conflict, we must shine a light on the places history tried to forget.